Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. Even when I was in high school, I adored kids and took up babysitting jobs to earn extra cash. Parents loved me as I was really good with kids, and I rarely had any complaints from anyone. My sister took advantage of this fact, and whenever we had relatives over that brought along little kids, she'd leave me to babysit while everyone's out and would call over her boyfriend or sneak out herself. This behavior stopped when we eventually moved out because of higher education, and with time, I forgot about this habit of hers. But then, years later, she got married and eventually had her own kids. Because I adored my nephew and niece, I would occasionally visit them once or twice a month, and my sister would take that time for herself. She would either rest up or go out for the night. I didn't mind as it wasn't too difficult to look after those two kids. But things started to go wrong when my sister took my love for kids too far and called me every time she needed to do something. At first, I didn't question her motives, but when her calls became as frequent as 3 times a week, I finally put my foot down and asked her why she keeps doing this. The more important question was if she really wanted to live a life where she wasn't bound by the responsibilities of being a mother, then why did she even have kids to begin with? At this, she got really mad and called me all sorts of things for being insensitive and emotionless. She said if I hated helping my big sister out so much, I could have just said so instead of taking her kids as an excuse. I was completely blown away at how fast she turned the tables on me and was trying to gaslight me into believing I was the problem when in fact it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with how granted she takes my time for. So I lost my cool and told her I don't have time to come running whenever she rings me, so she should find a real babysitter and actually pay someone for the job I do for free. After that, I stopped going over to her house and only met the kids once every 2 months at a public place whenever my sister agreed to bring him along. That was about a year ago. About 2 weeks ago, I had a severe ache in my tummy, and it got so bad that I needed to be hospitalized. After all the tests, the doctors told me that I needed an appendectomy and would need to be at the hospital for a few days. I didn't have anyone except my sister, so I naturally called her and told her what had happened. Now, just to make it clear, we don't really have a bad relationship. We always try to be there for each other and even fight about a lot of things. So, when I called her, she came to the hospital at once. She stayed with me during my surgery. The kids were also at the hospital because she couldn't leave them at home alone. The problem was that one day into my recovery after the surgery, she told me that she needed to take care of some business and needed to be out for a few hours, and she's leaving the kids with me in my room. I was horrified because how can I look after a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old when I can barely get out of my bed? Does she really think it was a good idea to leave them here? I asked her why can't her husband come and take them away, and she said he was on a cruise. Now, her husband works as a marine engineer and often goes out for long periods of time. I didn't know he already got his new post, and I told her to just hire a babysitter, but she left before I could argue any more. And when a few hours went by, she didn't come home. I tried to call her, but she wouldn't answer her cell. My niece, Tully, was thankfully being quiet and fell asleep on the couch, but I was more concerned about Jackson. He was running around the hospital all day, and the nurse had to bring him back several times. He suddenly said that he wasn't feeling so good, and when I checked his temperature, he was running a fever. I tried to call my sister again, and when she didn't answer, I called a nurse and asked her to give him some medication. The nurse said she'd need a parent's consent before she could give him anything, and I told her how my sister was unreachable. She said she couldn't really help me out because it might cause legal problems for them later. So I told her, as their aunt, I'll sign the consent form. But she brought a doctor instead to have a look at Jackson. The doctor said it looked like he had picked up a viral infection, and soon enough he started vomiting too. I asked them to do something, but they said they can't help until the parents give their consent. My sister was still unreachable, and as Jackson's condition kept worsening, I didn't know what to do. Then the nurse told me that in some cases where immediate care is needed to be administered and they don't have consent from legal guardian of children, they are needed to notify authorities. In this case, the CPS, who can then step in and allow them to take the action required to help the child medically. She said, if I can't contact the mother anytime soon, they can report the case to CPS, who will then take action against the guardian for lack of care and would give the hospital authority to administer the care required to the child. For a second, I was like, I can't allow them to do that because it'd mean they'll take away my nephew and niece from my sister. But then, when I thought about it, those children actually deserved a parent that could care for them. My sister used to rely on me for babysitting, and even now, when I'm in hospital, incapable of helping her out, she left them here, knowing full well that hospitals are the hub for diseases. She needs a wake-up call to her reality, and she needs to fight for her children. So I told the nurse to contact a CPS worker and help out Jackson, who looked a lot worse than he was a few hours ago. Now the social worker is here and has asked me a few questions. Currently, she's in Jackson's room, who is being given fluids, the last I heard. It's been almost 16 hours and my sister is still MIA, and I don't know if I feel more sorry for her or for myself right now. I need to know if what I did was out of pettiness and an absolute a-hole move or not. Update 1. My sister finally came back around 8 p.m. last night, and when she found out the ruckus that was created, she was furious. They wouldn't let her see her own kid, and even Tully was taken away from her. I'm still in my bed going under post-surgery care and had no stamina to fight her, so when she came in my room and started shouting, I didn't even bother holding a mirror to her face to show her who was the real one at fault here. I only said that this was one time too many that she took my love for kids for granted and left her own kids in the hands of someone who was incapable of even hurting a fly. Then I asked a nurse to not allow my sister in my room, and they called the security to take her out. I feel a little guilty about what I did, but she has been MIA for over 24 hours, and when I asked her where she had been, she didn't bother answering me. She just said that she's tired and just came by to pick up the kids. Too bad for her that there are no kids to be picked up. In other news, Jackson is doing much better now, and it was just viral that got bad because his immune system was very weak. The social worker that was here told me that they'll take both Tully and Jackson with them when the hospital clears my nephew to be discharged. It's almost funny to me how something as common as a viral could cause something so big in our lives. Hopefully, my sister would learn her lesson that all her actions have consequences. It's been 3 months since my last update here. I've recovered quite well after my surgery and have been living a good life now. The thing is that my sister was fighting a case in court to get her children back. Since that day in the hospital when she was forced to leave, I tried talking to her, but she has cut all contact with me. I wasn't able to get any update on how the kids were doing or what her condition was. But yesterday, my sister called and she sounded drunk. I went over to her house immediately to check up on her and almost couldn't recognize her as the same person from back then. She looked exhausted, and the eye bags gave her a haunted look. She told me, in her drunken state, how she had fought tooth and nail to get her kids back, but because of what I said to the social worker, the first time they knew how neglectful she had been to the kids, and no matter what she did, the court kept ruling against her. She also said her husband would be back soon and she wouldn't be able to lie to him anymore that the kids are not home. And to think she's trying to lie to save a marriage that's failing from the start was even worse. I asked her what she meant by that, and she told me how she was having an affair with a friend of hers for a while now, and her husband found out before he left for his post. He gave her a chance to break it off, and that's what she was going to do that day when she left the kids with me. At this point, I didn't know whether to be disgusted by her or pity. It was like her life kept getting worse and worse, and she was the only one to blame. Without knowing what else I could do, I took her to her bed and tucked my drunken sister in and came back home. I feel sad for her, but at the same time, I'm glad those kids would find a home where they could grow up with parents who actually cared about them. My sister is living with me now. A lot has happened in the last 6 months, and now she's a mother without her kids, divorced and jobless. I have never seen a person wreck their life worse than she has, and I'm glad our parents aren't here to see her in this state. Since she doesn't have a place to go anymore, I gave her a room in my house under the condition that she would find another job within a month and move out. If she doesn't do that, I'll kick her out. And I have some hope for her because even when she hit rock bottom and was almost in a depression, she didn't really become a drug addict or an alcoholic. So maybe she'll be able to pull herself together, and giving her a place to live is the least I could do. NTA, I bet your sister was out sleeping with another man. All signs say she's having an affair and doesn't care about children from her first marriage. In my opinion, you did the right thing and those kids are better off without her. YTA, there was no need to go to such extreme lengths. You could have asked someone to buy an Advil from the medical store and given it to the kid yourself. He wouldn't have gotten so worse without it, and the hospital wouldn't have to worry about legal implications. But at the same time, that mother is also an AH for leaving her kids at a hospital alone. I, 38 male, have a daughter, Mabel, 15, female. I'm Mabel's sole parent. Her mother signed full custody over to me and hasn't been in the picture since our daughter was 1. Being a single dad hasn't been easy, but I'm now married to my wife of 2 years, Sarah, 39. Sarah has 2 children, female 16 and male 12, from a previous relationship. Before we moved in together, we had an argument that we wouldn't discipline each other's biological children to prevent any resentment, considering their ages when we got together. For the past couple of weeks, Mabel has been begging me to let her dye her hair purple. I've told Mabel no, because unnatural hair colors are against her school's rules. If she comes into school with purple hair, they will keep sending her home until it's a natural color again. This happened to one of my friend's children. This would result in Mabel missing classes, and I just don't want to risk it. I tried to compromise and told Mabel we could do a temporary wash to wash out purple dye over the Christmas holidays, but she is being very impatient. Mabel has now been asking to change schools, as there's another school in our area that allows unnatural hair colors. Once again, I told Mabel no. First of all, it is petty, but Mabel goes to the same secondary school as her step-siblings. We would have to leave the house very early to get them all to school on time. Secondly, the school that Mabel wants to change to has a very poor reputation for not teaching the students anything and letting them get away with murder. We live in a small town and word spreads. Thirdly, we've had no problems with Mabel's current school. Her grades are decent, the teachers are good at what they do, and Mabel has lots of friends there. Mabel has expressed no other reason for changing schools other than wanting to dye her hair. I tried to explain to Mabel that her education is more important than this, but she insists that she should be able to look how she wants. Mabel has been complaining about how unfair I'm being to Sarah. Sarah brought it up to me in private and suggested I let my daughter change schools. She said, autonomy and self-expression is important and that Mabel should get to make some choices for herself. I shut it down and said that I'm not letting Mabel change school, just so that she can dye her hair. Sarah said I'm being unreasonable and controlling. AITA? We don't live in America. Schools not allowing unnatural hair colors is a pretty standard rule, and the vast majority don't allow it. NTA, changing schools over this is ridiculous. To her, it feels like the end of the world. But she's 15. Get some clip-ins, sprays, and hair chalk for the weekends. If she wants crazy nail polish or temporary tattoos, totally cool, as long as they are off, hidden for school. Maybe look at getting some fun wigs. She might like learning how to dye them herself. If she wants to find the brightest red, darkest black, or lightest blonde her school considers in the natural spectrum, totally doable. Tell her that you love how colorful she is and you want her to express herself, but her school is the one that will give her the best education. And right now, that's more important. NTA, but I think I know why you're feeling like you are. Your daughter doesn't feel validated. She is lacking an outlet for self expression. She's literally asking for it. You should sit her down and have a calm tone, adult conversation. She's 15. She should be able to grasp adult concepts. You need to validate what she needs. Tell her you understand that her right to self expression is important and you will always support her. Tell her you're open to just about any form of self expression that won't require a school change. Talk to her about college and her goals in life and how this school is an important opportunity for her to achieve her goals. Not everyone goes to a prep school. You need to make it clear that education is more important than self expression. It's that she needs to make a compromise for her goals. She wants to have a good life, white picket fence, whatever. She needs to figure out how to do both. She needs to find a way to express herself without compromising her future responsibilities to herself. I think the important note are she needs to be validated. She needs to know that you value her right to self expression. She needs to accept responsibility for her future. She, at the end of the age bracket where parents can make her do what's right, she needs to start learning how to plan for her future. When my son was in middle school, he was best friends with a girl named S, who he started dating right around when he started high school. S has a poor relationship with her family and was such a sweet girl, so I was more than happy to include her in all our family activities, vacations, dinner, etc. Around Christmas of their senior year, my son told me that S's parents were kicking her out shortly after she graduates and wanted to know if she could stay with us when the next semester starts, when she could find a place to stay near campus, and I, of course, agreed. However, when the day came that she was supposed to move out, my son told me they were no longer dating, and he is dating another girl in their friend group, who was S's best friend. I asked him if S had a place to stay, and he said it was no longer his responsibility. He described S as needy and thought being with her was just a lot of work. I told him we need to make sure she has a place to stay, but he refused. So I told him I would, with or without him. So long story short, he decided to stay with his father all summer because she had nowhere to stay and he didn't want to be around her. Well, all that was 4 to 5 years ago, but all that time I've kept in contact with S and tried to be there when she needed me. Well, she was graduating and had no one to show up for it. So I, of course, accepted when she asked me to attend her graduation. However, when my son later brought up his graduation, I found out it was on the same day. I explained that I wouldn't be attending because S had no one else showing up to her graduation. He didn't know I was in contact with S, and I think that just added to how upset he was. I tried to explain he would have his dad, stepmom, aunt, step-siblings, and 2 sets of grandparents show up, and should try and picture things from her perspective. I couldn't get him to understand, even though I had also already promised to take him to dinner, wherever he wanted, with as many other relatives as he wanted to attend, the day after. Even though that was a while ago, he still hasn't forgiven me. I've tried talking to him, but our relationship has never been the same. AITA? You told your son that you would prefer to go to some other kid's graduation rather than his own. I'm all for taking care of children that need it, but to do it at the detriment of my own kid? No. YTA. YTA, I mean, how could OP not know their own kid was graduating that year? even if he hadn't yet invited her. She could have told the ex no, because her son was graduating.